In this video, we will see how to easily apply powerful effects from filters that change the color of our image to sophisticated blur effects while using Clip Studio Paint in Simple Mode. In Clip Studio Paint Simple Mode, starting from version 3.2.0, it's possible to easily apply quick filters and quick effects to a layer or to an entire image with a simple tap. These options are readily available by tapping the three circles located right under the eyedropper tool. While using filters can quickly correct, enhance, or add an interesting twist to a piece, it's important to know how they work in order to predict their behavior and avoid unexpected results. Filters and effects can be used as they are to experiment or finalize a picture and add the final touches, but also combined during any workflow to achieve new looks. All the filters can be applied within a selection area or directly to the entire canvas, but let's deep dive into all the quick filters and effects, checking all of them out. Let's start with the quick filters. To apply them, let's tap on the three-circle icon and then on Filters. We will get a prompt asking where to apply them. The choice is between the current layer and all. The former is self-explanatory. Applying the filter to the layer we currently selected in the Layers menu, while the latter will create a merged layer placed above all the other layers in the layer window where the filter will be applied. For the sake of simplicity, we will work on a single layer. So in this case, I will tap on Apply to the current layer. At this point, a window will pop up. This window is made of two tabs. One is called Filters, while the other is called Adjust. Let's see Filters first. The Filters tab contains all the available filters: Vivid, Warm, Cool, Lemonade, Cobalt Blue, Aquamarine, Aurora, Sepia, and Monotone. Tapping on any of these filters will immediately change the image accordingly. The effect at this point is not applied yet, letting us decide the intensity or strength of the look by moving the slider underneath the filters. The scale of the strength slider goes from 0, where the effect won't be visible, to 100, where we will get the most visible changes. Once we selected the desired amount, we can tap OK, located in the top right corner of the screen, or apply further enhancements by tapping on the Adjust tab. The parameters in this tab allow us to adjust the tones in our image. The parameters available are brightness, contrast, hue, saturation, warmth, tint, and sharpness. Each parameter is pretty self-explanatory, but changing each one of them even slightly can make a big difference in the final look, on top of applying the filter we initially selected. Once we decide the tones of our picture and the style and intensity of our filter, we can take a peek at how the picture was before our processing by tapping on the icon located right on top of the filter window. Tap and hold the button to show how the image was before. Once the button is released, we can preview the image after our effects are applied. If we are happy with the final look, we can then press OK and bake the effect onto the image. Quick effects. Differently from quick filters that focus on colors, quick effects lets us manipulate the image in a relatively more drastic way. Among the many options, we can apply effects like blur, grain, or generate a line-only version from a given image. We will see each one of them in detail, but first we have to launch the quick effects window. To do so, just tap on the three-circle icon and this time tap on Effects. Similarly to quick filters, a prompt window will pop up to let us choose between applying the effect on the current layer or the merged version of the image. For this example, we will apply the effects to a single layer. With all that being said, let's see what effects Clip Studio Paint offers. Extracting lines. The first effect we will explore is Extract Lines. Tapping on any effect will immediately show us the results of the filter. In the case of the extract line, we will get a black and white line art generated from the original image. This works particularly well to extract a line art with transparent background starting from a traditional drawing, but will turn any starting image into its line art version. The filter also has a slider that lets us decide the thickness of the line art or its density. Setting the slider close to 0 will make the line art light and thin, while setting it close to 200 will turn the extracted lines thicker and overall will output a darker look. This tool will also automatically pop up anytime an image is loaded onto the canvas. Chromatic Aberration, Radial, and lateral. This effect is commonly seen in relation to lenses and the way the light scatters, especially along their edges where the light waves might not be perfectly overlapping. This creates a sort of rainbow effect particularly visible on cheaper quality lenses, but despite being historically an unwanted effect, it slowly became an aesthetic choice. The vibrant color fringes around the edges add saturation and adds excitement to any image. In Clip Studio Paint, we have two options, radial or lateral. Radial will apply the effect gradually gradually, starting from a center point, selectable by moving the cross on screen. The center will then have the lowest amount of aberration that will be more intense going towards the edges. Lateral will apply the effect on the whole image uniformly. However, tapping on the effects a second time will let us pick the angle. This angle will change how the color fringes scatter. Both effects have a strength slider that lets us decide the intensity of the filter. Noise, color, and gray. Noise is the most straightforward filter and simply adds a green layer to the image. In case we pick the color noise, the green will be composed of multiple colored pixels, while in the gray version, the green will be made of pixels of different luminosity but in grayscale. The strength slider in both cases control how intense the grain will be in relation to the original image. Retro film, vintage, modern, and warm. For the lovers of vintage look, retro film is definitely an appealing option. These filters are pre-made combinations of multiple effects at once. When one of these filters is selected, we'll immediately get presented with a retro look applied to our image. However, tapping on the filter again will, as usual, let us fine-tune them. In the window that appears, we will find different adjustments. The first one is a drop-down menu where we can choose between no color filter, sepia tone, light leaks on the whole image or part of it, or even both sepia and light leaks at the same time. The intensity of these effects can be controlled by the slider called effect strength, and right after effect strength, we will find a slider called intensity that will let us control the strength of the chromatic aberration, while the last slider will control the strength of the noise. At the bottom, we can also reset the filter to its default settings. Once we're happy with our filter, we can go back to the previous window, fine-tune the overall strength of the whole stacked group of filters, and finally press OK to apply as usual. Gaussian blur, lens blur, radial blur, and motion blur. These are all filters that apply a blur to our image. The difference between each one of them is the algorithm the program applies. Each blur can be used creatively in combination with other effects or to give specific looks. Gaussian blur is one of the most common and simply blurs the image linearly. The radius will control the intensity of the blur. For example, this can be used lightly to reduce the digital sharpness of an image. Lens blur is close to the type of blur we get with a camera lens. The highlights, for example, will turn into bokeh and can be perfect to make a background look out of focus while keeping a character in focus. Tapping on this filter again will lead us to the familiar adjust panel. Here we can change the radius of the blur, the shape of the highlights, and the intensity of it. Radial blur is closer to Gaussian blur, but will give us the option to choose a center point where the blur will be the lowest, while gradually intensifying towards the edges in a radial fashion, creating a sense of motion. From the adjust panel, we can choose the strength, the direction of the blur, outward respectively to the center, inward, or both at the same time, and the smoothness of it. Box will make the blur sharper and aggressive, while smooth will give a more relaxed and soft blur. Example, we can use radial blur to smooth out the edges of our canvas and accentuate the character in the middle, giving it a stronger focus. Finally, the reset button at the bottom will reset the filter to its default settings. The last blur is motion blur, that works identically to the radial one, but instead of following a radial direction, it's linear. The rest of the settings stay the same. With this type of blur, we can simulate movement, for example, when adding particles effects to our image. Sharpness. This filter is quite simple, but really useful, especially before exporting a picture. Adding sharpness to an image can make the details more visible, particularly depending on its size. For example, a small resolution picture will usually benefit from a small increase in sharpness, while on larger images, stronger sharpness level might be necessary to achieve the same perceived look at a distance. Artistic. Color and lines, color only, and lines only. The final effect we are going to check out are the artistic ones. Color and lines are a combination of the other two, applying them at the same time. The strength slider will, as usual, let us decide the intensity of the filter, but tapping on the filter again will open the usual adjustment panel where we will find many settings that let us fine-tune the look of this filter. We can change the line thickness, simplicity, density, and opacity, but also how much the filter will blend the colors, blur them, or reduce them in number. This filter can be really useful to simplify a picture, like for example a photograph to be used as a background in a comic, giving it a more painterly look. This way the photo will integrate seamlessly in the final look. Artistic color only and lines only simply reproduce the same effects as we described so far, but excluding respectively the lines or the colors. This is all I have for you today. I hope you learned something new and and you will enjoy using all these filters and effects in your workflow from now on. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and to subscribe to the Clip Studio Paint official YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.
Clip Studio Paint.